Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Jordan. My layout is the Gilpin Tram, which is ON2. There's also a connecting section in ON3 and a little bit of O standard gauge, a little bit of everything, but that's the way I like it. Variety is the spice. First, I want to talk about the layout. Then we'll talk about hardware and software. The layout is the important thing for remote operations. The reason being, if you're not around, you can't throw switches by hand and you can't uncouple by hand. The Blackhawk portion of the Gilpin Tram was designed to be hands-free. Okay, so all of the switch machines are thrown from the keypad, whether it's Digitrax, Y throttle, or engine driver. Any of those, as long as you've set it up through JMRI, you can access and throw switch machines. That's providing you have DS44 controllers for the switch machines, which I do. So four machines controlled by each one of those controllers. There are a total of 20 switch machines on the Blackhawk section. Those are listed in JMRI, and you can see them on your phone if you have engine driver or Y throttle. They're also available through the keypads if you're running Digitrax or NCE. The only real requirement for the layout is that you have DCC. Again, it can be Digitrax, it can be NCE, whatever you have. If it's connected through JMRI, it can be accessed remotely. The next stumbling block, of course, is switches. If you have switch machines, tortoises, either snap switches or tortoises, as long as you have a way to control them through JMRI, you can set those up to be remotely operated. And the last piece of the puzzle is the uncoupling situation. There are magnets on the Blackhawk section. Each of those magnets has a little yellow strip of paper beside it so that the operators who are viewing things remotely can actually see where the magnets are. And they can run their trains through them, be able to uncouple, recouple. Magnetic uncoupling is great. Unfortunately, magnetic uncoupling never stops. So you have to be careful when you leave a car over the uncoupling ramp and pull away and it's still there. So it takes a little getting used to, but it's the only way to do remote operations. The next portion I want to talk about is hardware. I've finally decided to use two computers. One computer to run JMRI and the other computer to run the Zoom meeting. Now I did this because I've tried using just one computer to run Zoom and JMRI and run the layout, and it just slows things down way too much. So I'm finally going to dedicate one machine to JMRI, to running the layout, and the other just to providing the visuals through Zoom. The JMRI runs on a specific port, and you have to, through that computer, you have to open a port so that people can get to JMRI from the internet. Zoom is available to anybody who wants it. It's a free download. Unfortunately, the free download will only allow you to have a meeting that lasts 1 hour. If you want to have meetings that last longer than that, then you have to buy a little extra, which is worth it. I mean, we can operate for an hour, but it's not very gratifying. So I've popped for the extra, and Zoom will let you have as long as you need to have a meeting. The next part is cell phones. Burster used cell phones. I did the same thing. Unfortunately, I can only buy 3 cell phones at a time. Nobody would sell me any more than 3. I don't know why. So I have a couple of Samsung phones and some Motorola phones. One thing you have to be concerned about with mobile phones is that they are internet connected. Okay, so they have internet capability, and that they can handle Zoom. Some of the older phones won't run Zoom. So you have to make sure that the phones that you get or that you're using can handle Zoom and can also connect to the internet. You don't have to have a carrier. You don't have to be able to make a phone call with it as long as you have internet access. Now let me talk a little bit about software. Of course, the main piece of software that you need is JMRI. the Java Model Railroad interface. That's a free download, and it's great stuff. I use it to program all of my decoders. I also use it to program the switches and all of the operations on the layout. It's the free install, no problem there. But you do have to go to a little bit of programming to make sure that all of your switches are available through JMRI so that people can see them and throw them. The next piece of software, of course, is Zoom. It's a free download again. If you're just going to be a client, then you don't have to worry about any extra money. You won't have to worry about time limits. It's only if you're going to host things, then you have to worry about how much time you're going to spend at it. If your meeting is going to last longer than an hour, then you'll have to upgrade, and that'll cost you a little bit of money, but it's not bad. It's worth it. I get tired of operating alone, so this is a good way to go about having some company. Let's see. With Zoom, the location of cameras is very important. I've tried to locate as few as possible to cover the most of the layout as I can. Now that boils down to 6 cameras. You can see them. Let me take off the pin here and go to a different view. So now you can see the various cameras that I have. There's a left and right layout cam. Those are the overall views of the lower section of the layout. And then there are a couple of specific cameras. There's one in the helix. That's this guy down here. Let me bring that up. It shows the line coming in from Golden. This is all 3 foot. So you know what's coming into the yard. That's useful for the 3 foot engineer. So he's going to be moving cars in and out from the stock pen and getting water, etc. Also, there's a specific camera on my track diagram. As you can see, it shows the industries as well as the track diagram and the switch machine positions, or the switch positions. So if I wanted to throw, for instance, switch 17, I'd select that from the keypad or from Y throttle, and you can see that the switch indicates thrown, or you can close it, goes back the other way. That's all through Y throttle, engine driver, or through your keypads. Let's see, what else? There's the yard throat. Get it up here, yard throat. So there we go. This shows the main uncoupling magnet for the beginning of the yard. So this gets a lot of use. Demonstrate here. Let's see. Let me get back to, that's number 4. So I'm going to pull ahead a little bit. You all know how the Kadee magnets work, of course. So I'm going to pull ahead, put on the brakes, go back up a little bit, and leave that car right there. And we'll go about our business in other places. When we're ready, you can come back and take that cut of 2 cars. Since they're delayed uncoupling magnets, they will hold those couplers open so that the locomotive can come back, not couple, and you can push those cars off and leave them somewhere else. You can push them down into a siding, leave them on the main, whatever. That's the purpose of all of the magnets. If you don't have those, then it's going to be difficult. So that's the deal with that guy. Let's see what else. There's another independent camera, and that's at the engine house. There are 2 uncoupling magnets over there. You can see one to the left and one to the right behind flat car number 4. Little pieces of yellow show where the magnets are. So the operators can get over those, move cars around. It actually works pretty well. Let's see, function keys, Y throttle and engine driver are both available. Y throttle is for Apple. Engine Driver is for Android phones. Engine Driver is free. Y-Throttle is free, but if you do the free version, it doesn't have all of the pieces that you need. It only gives you 9 or 10, I believe, function keys. So if you get the enhanced version, it'll cost you a little bit more. Well, it'll cost you, yeah, cost you a little bit more. It'll cost you more because it's not free. But it will give you a complete set of function keys, which comes in handy because usually F11 is the brake. And if you don't have an F11 key, you kind of have problems. So anyway, that's about it. So far, I've had 3 or 4 sessions. My railroad usually runs with 6 operators, and it does get a little crowded in the main room. So having 3 operators remotely kind of frees up space here in the main layout, and they're still able to run. One problem, of course, is the operating system, which on my layout is car cards and waybills. The remote operators have received, before the session, they receive this order of trains. And I make that up ahead of time as like a switch list. It shows which trains are coming from Central City and from Golden, and also shows what cars are located in other places outside the yard. So if you want to, if for instance, one of the engineers on the 2-foot gauge wants to put a couple of cars in the New York mill, you can see that, well, there aren't any cars in the New York mill over on the right, but he's going to have to move cars out of the Polar Star if he wants to put any cars in there. So this list is updated. So this is the listing, and it gives the operators, the remote operators, an idea of what's going on, and they're able to function pretty well having just this information. All right. So let me go back to the full view. So that's it. That's all of the operations. It works pretty well. There are always technical issues getting people in and out. I need to give a shout out to Victor Gilbert, who was very helpful to Burr and to me to get all of the computing stuff lined up so that we can get people into JMRI through the web. Thank you, Victor. Great stuff. And thanks to Al Lowe for the invite. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody have any questions for Gary?
I was just going to say that I'm not as familiar with On2. Is that one of the less common gauges?
Well, you might say that. It's pretty rare. There are only a couple of railroads in the continental United States that were actually 2-foot gauge. One's in Maine, the Maine 2-footers, and the other one was the Gilpin Tram in Colorado. So it's pretty rare. I got hooked on it a long time ago and managed to find locomotives that were brought in by Overland and some ore cars from Grant Line. So that made it possible for me to actually build a layout in On2 and have it work.
Gary, have you tried to use Skype instead of Zoom to do your sessions? Because that's a free app and it seems to have a lot of the same capabilities.
I haven't tried that, but I certainly will give it a shot. If it works, that's great.
Yeah, I can't discover if there's a charge for going over, say, 1 hour or how many participants. It all seems to be free.
What computer are you using to run your layout? You got a Raspberry Pi or Mac or a laptop PC?
I have a Lenovo laptop that is basically dedicated just to running the layout. Like I said, I think it's better to have another computer running Zoom or Skype or whatever, so that you don't have the conflict of too much CPU time.
On your JMRI, do you use the switch list capabilities of the JMRI and then translate them into how you're doing it, whether you're doing it live or whether you're doing it virtual?
Yeah, I use the panels. In panels, I created the switches and named them all, and that shows up in Y throttle or engine driver so that you can see all of those in the switch list. Of course, if you're there, then it's just a push button on the Digitrax throttle. But once you program all those in, then anybody can see them.
I interpreted his question to be about car forwarding.
Oh, no, I don't do any car forwarding. Like I said, mine's all just car cards and waybills. I had to create an extra position called a clerk to handle the paperwork on the layout. But that person also updates the order of trains when necessary so that people can take a screenshot of that and use that as their roadmap to operating.
Gary, some of us have had an online discussion about these ultra small magnets, you know, 1/8 of an inch in diameter.
Right.
That you can place on either side of the track. Is that what you have, or do you have those under the track layout magnets?
Yeah, I have the Kadee, the delayed coupling magnets, the big ones that are under the rail.
Well, for anybody that's going to think about doing this, these others, you can just drill a hole in the surface of the of your layout next to the track, next to the rails, and insert them, and they're invisible basically.
That'd be a lot better way to go about it, for sure.
Oh yeah, because I've avoided that because of just the issue of the Kadee magnets being so big. My problem is I've cut most of the glad hands off of my couplers now because we use the skewers to couple and uncouple.
Oh yeah, it's much easier if you can just do it by hand. On mine, all of the Kadee couplers are HO couplers.
Yeah.
But when I put everything together, I found that the glad hands weren't long enough to actually be activated by the couplers. So I replaced all of the glad hands and all the couplers with longer ones.
I've experimented with the small super magnets, about 330 seconds in diameter. And I find that they work very well, except that if you only put one on each side of the track, then uncoupling is really tricky because it's only a very narrow range that you can actually uncouple. Whereas if you use the Kadee magnets, you have 1.5 inches or so is approximate. On my own layout, I cut the Kadee magnets in half, and I still find plenty of uncoupling range, but just using a single super magnet on each side of the track, the uncoupling range is very, very short.
That makes me wonder if maybe you could get away with putting 2 on each side of the track of the small magnets, because I found they're pretty picky as well. I have used those on my previous layout. I haven't gotten around to doing that on the current layout yet. So that's a long ways down the road.
You can also buy those magnets in larger sizes. You don't have to go 330 seconds. You can go 1/4 inch or 530 seconds.
Actually, I misspoke. I think the ones I'm using are like 5/16 in diameter. At the club I belong to, we've added a big extension to it, and a yard where there was never any requirement for uncoupling at one end now requires uncoupling ramps. And so I'm trying by putting 3 magnets on each side, 3 of those, whatever size they are, 5/16, I guess, magnets on each side of the track. The only tricky part is getting the right polarity when you put them in.
The problem with the small magnets on a remote layout, there's a delay through Zoom. So you have to really lock in the delay time to get your magnets in the right places, to get your cars over them so that you can actually uncouple. So the larger a space you have for the uncoupling magnet, the better.
Exactly, and even switching in person, you have to, if you've got any momentum on your switcher or whatever, it's really kind of tricky with just one of those magnets on each side to get it to uncouple. And somebody asked where you get them, just search on eBay.
As someone who's operated on Gary's layout remotely, I have to say it took a while to get used to it, but you could. He also uses a lot of momentum. and requires braking. So it took a little bit of doing for me to be able to hit those magnets with the delay on Zoom and the delay on the momentum, and then the putting on the brake and so forth. It took a while, but we operated, and I think we had fun. How long was the session, Gary? 2 hours at least, right?
Yeah, it was 2 hours last time. You did a great job, by the way, Al.
I tried.
Like a real steam train then. Okay.
Yeah, I use a lot of momentum and braking, and it's the layout is difficult to run anyway, but remotely it's a real challenge. And all the people who've done it from California to Arizona have done a great job and have figured it out quite quickly.
Yeah, just explain when my operating session, we had people from here, and then from Arizona. Al Frasch was in Arizona, and your daughter was where?
In Pasadena.
Pasadena, yeah.
Gary, no brass locomotives hit the floor, right?
No, that was one of my great fears. So I put all kinds of barriers in place so that even if there's an earthquake, they won't hit the floor.
I have a friend who operates an O-scale layout, and he's been doing some remote operations, and he acts as he says, traveling conductor driving a pickup truck around to uncouple cars when the conductor requests it. So he has a conductor and an engineer, both remote, and they have switch lists. Actually, he uses ship it, and but they ask him to uncouple. The other thing that he does is moves the camera around if necessary to help the remote crew see exactly where the car is.
Yeah, there are always problems. You know, cars derail, people go over switches the wrong way. So there has to be somebody there to pick up the slack and pick up the pieces, basically.
Well, thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. I know everybody else enjoyed it too. I'm so glad you were able to, and thanks for sharing from wherever you are in cyberspace in Colorado.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.